Chris Chinnock here for Display Daily with Mark Nesselrode here in the General Dynamics booth at IITSEC 2014. We are looking at an Oculus Rift demo in back of us here, and this is kind of General Dynamics' first baby steps into this virtual environment. So Mark, tell us exactly what you've done for this demo.
What we've done for this demo is, as a proof of concept, looked at can you convert GoPro video into a Havoc game engine format, take that Havoc game engine and now interface that with an Oculus Rift for that really completely immersive environment, and use an Xbox controller for the functions of firefighting, movement, and thermal imaging. And the real key development here was the how can you make the fire seem like the real fire? How can you make that thermal conductivity of the various materials correct? How can you make the radiant heat transfer, the convective heat transfer? Can you have auto ignition if you don't get everything down below the ignition temperature so that there's a reflash?
A lot of physics in this.
Huge amount, and quite honestly, that was our reason for this engine. It is about physics, and
Havoc has a great physics engine.
Their physics engine is wonderful, and it allows. We felt if we could get this engine to do this, that there were so many other applications, especially looking at flash applications for gas monitoring, maybe in a nuclear power plant, maybe doing dosimetry on there, on a personal dosimeter, so you could share where your radiation level is in a containment building. So this early demonstration was, could we get these equations right? Could we do things to modify behavior, and then could we make it so that firefighters, and we've tested it with municipal firefighters, would they see the realism of the thermal imaging of the sound? Would that meet their test for is it accurate? Does the hose action of that Titan nozzle, which again we had to do some physics modeling on the nozzle because the standard hose doesn't come out with a tight 30-degree high velocity fog. Okay. So all those things, and you fight a fire in the dark. So the only things you've got helmet lamps, that's an application. You've got only the battle lanterns. And in a power plant, you have only the emergency battery lighting. But having that all work correctly, and then making sure that when you look at can you test your thermal imager in a clean environment? Is it correct? And when you go look for the fire. So all those kind of interface things. And then we've been working with a university partner down Deakin University in Australia. And they've got some phenomenal haptic research. So they've actually developed for us, and we are about to incorporate that in a full motion sense, a hose where you can have 180 pounds of pressure.
Well, that was the point, because you're using a game controller here, and you really want to make this a more actual.
What you really want to do ultimately, whether it's in a power plant operation for a breaker or a valve or a control panel or a fire, is have them operate their own equipment. So how can you, or even an engagement for security, their own weapon. And you want to have that haptic feedback so that because that's a big if you don't feel the flow, or you're at the end of your hose run, you have to wait till you get more hose. You can't, and if you have an uncharged hose, well, you pretend you can walk around easily. A charged fire hose
is pretty heavy, huh?
Is A, very heavy, and B, it's also very restrictive in movement. So you need to be able to have all those effects, because that's what drives that suspended disbelief for the learner, the trainee, and in this case, the team, because they've got to do all of that right. It doesn't count to just drag around a hose and have somebody, oh, see, you had it here for 10 seconds. No. If you don't get the temperature down and the agent on, and you haven't used the technique, and you haven't checked your environment, and you haven't checked for reflash, then you haven't fought the fire.
So your time frame is maybe a year to try and put this a more realistic demo together?
A year is not a bad time estimate for that.
And then you'll get real firefighters in to try to validate this?
Absolutely. And we've been talking in Virginia Beach, and they are chomping at the bit to be somebody who might want to try this.
Okay, cool.
But that would be, in any of these endeavors, get the real operators to do it. We have a lot of expertise, people that used to do it. I used to do it. But let's get the people that are doing it now. And this kind of approach really is, and our entire thought process is, this is a 21st century learning approach. And if you think about the other thing that's attractive about this is knowledge transfer. I have seen a lot of things in my time in the Navy that, were really singular events, but I learned a lot about that. But everybody can't afford to wait till their 15th year. Now I remember. No, why not build it into these games so that's part of your training?
It's a knowledge base.
It's a knowledge base, and now you can assess it. And this kind of an environment allows us to do assessment, because every action on the Xbox, every action in a motion capture can be actually recorded and evaluated.
And you mentioned this was captured with a GoPro camera, but in reality, to create more models in the future for ships and other environments, you can use either CAD drawings that they might be available, for example, or there are now very inexpensive laser scanners that can grab a point cloud. There are now inexpensive 360-degree video or still cameras that you can then overlay on that point cloud. So it's going to become much easier to create these virtual environments going forward.
Oh, absolutely, and that's really the power, when, as the ability to capture the environment, overlay it quickly, texture it properly, and now have it driven in the game engine with less and less transformation time. And because now
with the physics,
but now instead of sometimes you get a piping section, for example, in a power plant that's got 88,000 polygons because there's a very specific weld pattern and flange pattern. Well, you really can't deal with that. You got to kind of dumb it down, if you will. But as these techniques get better, and then as the devices that we use to interface with them, Oculus second generation, and as others come on the market and they're getting more competitive, this is going to take over, because this is the 21st century learner environment.
Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And make sure we give credit to our.
Here's our operator. Okay, cool.
It took me 20 minutes, but it's out.
You're the man.
20 minutes, put the fire out. Chris Chinnock here for Display Daily.